Landscapes of bewitching beauty. Unique. Species-rich. Exemplary. Because something extraordinary is happening here. These natural habitats remain intact only because humans intervene and shape them. A new pact with nature. The Swiss Alps, one of the most impressive landscapes in the world. For many, this is pure nature. And there is indeed a great diversity of animals and plants in the Alps. In summer, the alpine meadows are transformed into a species-rich sea of flowers. But few people know that the mountain pastures are a man-made paradise. Without grazing, this would all be forest. Farmers have been driving their livestock up to the mountain pastures for centuries. And it's that has created this mosaic of meadows, forests, and rock. But this age-old tradition could disappear, and with it the alpine pastures, because there are fewer and fewer herdsmen and mountain farmers. The Swiss have recognized the danger. Can they succeed in preserving the diversity of the mountain landscape? Gruissan is the biggest of Switzerland's cantons. For centuries, this region at the heart of the Alps was considered poor. The people here had to use the highland as well as the lowland areas to meet the needs of their herds. Nowadays, Gruissan is a favorite holiday destination and a region in which the landscape looks like it does in the publicity. But this idyll is hard work. In summer, animals and people live 2,000 meters up, far away from the nearest village. Many Swiss people no longer want to do this work. So many shepherds, men and women, come from abroad. Like Leen Jabali. Leen's been working in Switzerland for over 10 years. She grew up in Jordan and Sweden. This summer, she's up on the Kulm des Stels Alp, not far from Chur, in charge of nearly 900 sheep and 8 dogs. Her working day begins just after dawn. First, she checks that all's well with her animals. Despite the large number, she knows each sheep individually and notices immediately if something's wrong. What Leen does used to be part of everyday life in Switzerland. Nowadays, it's getting harder and harder to find shepherds. The solitude up here puts a lot of people off.
I love being alone with the animals. I love nature. And I find it so interesting, the movement of the animals, the sheep and the dogs. And it's a very... I'm my own boss up here, somehow. I decide what I want to do during the day, more or less. I mean, some things I have to do, of course. The freedom up here. The routine of this job gives me freedom.
The sheep have their own routine. Their job for the day is eating. For hundreds of years, the farmers have had their animals taken up to the high pastures and tended in the summer months. It's called summering. Leen is completely alone up here. If a sheep needs medical attention, she knows what to do. Turn the animal on its back and it keeps still. The nearest vet is a long way away. This time it's just a small wound, which Leen can treat with ointment.
What's hard is when you have sick animals, for example, or you have to kill an animal, to put an animal to sleep because it's too sick, it's not going to survive. But it's a part of the job and you have to take it, but it's hard to do that. It is.
The Kulm d'Astels Alp is big. Up to 1,200 sheep can graze here. This summer it's around 900. As in many Alp pastures in the region, the numbers are slowly declining. In the past, all the sheep belonged to the farmers in the nearby villages in the valley. Now, though, a lot of Alps are also taking in sheep boarded out from other regions, because more and more sheep farmers are going out of business. That's not always because of economic necessity. Life in Switzerland has changed. In many villages these days, tourism is far more important than agriculture. Many young people are moving to the cities, and a lot of farmers have no one to take over. Arno Casti has kept sheep for over 50 years. He took over the farm from his parents and grandparents. Now he's over 80 and still goes into the barn every day. He can't imagine living without his animals. In summer, there's not a lot to do down here in the valley. Most of the sheep are grazing up on the Alp with Leen. Just a few lambs are left down here. Arno's children have chosen different careers, so he'll probably be the last sheep farmer in the family.
The young people don't want to be tied down. They've got sport and other activities. Haymaking and everything. The work has to be done, and it doesn't bring in much these days, it's true. It would be better to hand on the small business. That would be good. Otherwise, you just have to stop. Everything comes to an end after all.
Small operations like his especially also have economic difficulties. When farmers like Arno Casti give up, that makes itself felt up in the mountains. The harsh life of the past has left its mark in the Alps, and down the centuries has brought immense wealth to the mountains, a wealth of habitats, plants and animals. This diversity is threatened if animals no longer graze here. Reto Elmer has been observing the changes for years. He's an expert in plant cultivation at Planterhof, a state-run farming consultancy. In summer, he's often out and about in the mountains, checking the condition of the meadows and pasture land.
Here we can see clearly the different stages of underusage. First, the mat grass is grazed less and spreads more and more. followed by heather and juniper, which also spread. And finally, we have a solid area of juniper, and that's completely lost to grazing, of course.
Reto Elmer is seeing how bushes and forests are increasingly replacing flower meadows. Up to 1,000 hectares are disappearing every year in the Swiss Alps. It's an insidious process. Once the encroachment has started, it sparks a vicious circle. Cows and other animals avoid these areas, and the bushes and trees take over more of the Alp pasture land. For some time now, a special assault force is being deployed. Grisons striped goats. Every 3 days, they're moved to a new location. And then they set about what other grazing animals spurn. Green alders, for example. The state is backing the project because keeping goats is expensive and time-consuming. Movable fences are needed, and a goat herd must always be there, which all costs money. No plants can survive this sort of onslaught for long. The goats even cope with branches as thick as an arm. They're as effective as chainsaws, and they don't need petrol, just bushes and young trees.
The problem with scythes and chainsaws is that the shrubs carry on growing, especially the alder. Cut it down and it comes back twice as strong, with even more strength. It just strengthens roots. We've tried it. The most effective method is the goats. Then the bushes slowly die off.
The goats will have plenty to do in years to come. They can slow down bush encroachment, but they can't stop it completely. The best way is to prevent encroachment in the first place. But for that, the meadows need to be grazed by livestock, which takes money and effort. To stop the sheep from falling or spreading out all over the huge area, Lean regularly has to set up fences, a strenuous task in this steep terrain. When one area has been grazed, the shepherd and her animals move on. In midsummer, they're constantly moving up.
The animals have so many rights in Switzerland, and that I really like. I think that's why I ended up in Switzerland. And they really look to the nature, which I also find very important. It's not only about the animals, it's about the whole picture. It's how everything goes together that's important.
Catering for the shepherds also involves cost and effort. The nearest supermarket is a long way away. At the start of summer, all their provisions are delivered to the Alp by helicopter. Afterwards, the only fresh food is what visitors bring with them. with one exception: fresh goat's milk. That's literally waiting on the doorstep every day. When she's looked after the animals, Line allows herself a break. The hut is her home and her office. There's paperwork to be done, even up here. Line has to keep the field journal. Everything is precisely recorded: weather, animal illness, or medicines she has to administer. The shepherd's life reminds Line of her young years in Jordan. A lot of her relatives worked as shepherds. Another reason why she loves her time on the Alp.
Many say that I'm stuck up here the whole summer, but for me it's the opposite. When I'm down in the valley in winter, I'm stuck. When I'm up here in summer, I'm free.
But not many people feel like Line these days. It's harder and harder to find shepherds able and willing to put in the hard work. These two are also migrant workers and come from Austria. For many years, they've worked every summer in Switzerland. The shepherds also need paying, but farming in the mountains brings in very little money. That's why in Switzerland the state is heavily engaged. It's investing a lot of money to preserve biodiversity and ancient traditions. By early July, Reto Elmer from Planterhof, the State Consultancy Institute, is up in the mountains every day. He's mapping rare plants. Like rampion, kidney vetch, alpine thyme, and campanula. These plants show that the meadow ecosystem is intact here.
All these flowers, the colors and the scents, that's something very beautiful.
When Reto Elmer certifies the high species diversity here, it means hard cash for the farmers. He stakes out a 6-meter diameter circle on the Alp. He needs to find at least 6 of 25 selected alpine flowers, known as indicator plants. Every hectare that meets this requirement qualifies for a sum of money as a subsidy. The farmers are paid the equivalent of about 130 euros per hectare, provided that the species diversity is large enough. Here, everything's fine.
The quality is very, very good. On this test area, we found at least 12 of these indicator plants. It's a very fine location. The quality is extremely good.
It seems contradictory that cows eating plants and flowers preserve the biodiversity. Grazing animals prevent certain species from taking over, and the growth of grasses is even stimulated by grazing. Over time, grasses and grass eaters have adapted to one another.
Grazing is essential for ensuring the species' richness is preserved. If there's less grazing, dwarf shrubs gradually move in and suppress this great diversity.
diese große Vielfalt.
Without government subsidies, it often wouldn't be worthwhile these days taking livestock up into the mountains. In addition to the biodiversity bonus, there are subsidies known as summering contributions for each alp, with which, for example, the shepherds can be paid.
Natürlich die Glockenblumen, gibt verschiedene. Dann den Alpenhelm auch, wenn es ein bisschen feuchter ist. Genau, Katzenpfötchen, sehr schön.
The state invests around 150 million euros a year to promote grazing and biodiversity. This outlay is already showing good results for the mountain pastures and for the farmers. But for a few years now, the sheep farmers have been contending with a new challenge: wolves. Missing for nearly 400 years, they're back again. Jan Bohner is the Livestock Protection Commissioner for the canton of Grisons. Today he's on his way to Lien because the Combe de Stels Alp is in the middle of the territory of a wolf pack. The beasts of prey also add to the species diversity and at the same time are controversial among the locals. The farmers and shepherds especially are worried about their animals. The number of wolves is growing every year, and increasingly often they snatch grazing livestock. That's a big problem for the sheep farmers. It's Jan Bohner's job to help them. Six herd protection dogs live among the sheep on the Combe de Stels Alp day and night and look after them. In addition to the herding dogs who live close together with the shepherds. The protection dogs, in contrast, aren't much interested in humans. Their families are the sheep. Jan Bohner trains dogs and takes care that they're from good stock, like the dogs that Lien works with.
Freut mich, jedes Mal. Hey. Hä? Schön.
Herd protection dogs have a demanding job. They need to learn to distinguish between friend and foe, which isn't so easy. The Alp may be remote, but it's not only wolves who visit. Sometimes hikers come by, with dogs.
Protokoll, das schauen wir später.
Ja.
Und ein Ersatz, bitte. Der Teil oben ist.
Berivan is still young and is in the middle of her training. Jan Bohner and Lien Jabali are working towards the test that every herd protection dog has to take.
Jetzt ist es locker.
Over the next 10 days, a collar with a transmitter will record all the dog's movements. The outlay for the dog training is great, as are their responsibilities.
Es muss alles stimmen.
Berivan
is a female Anatolian herd protection dog. Her job is to drive the wolves away, kill them, bark at them, or whatever. Tourists she has to leave alone. So she needs to get on well with people. We also test the relationship with the sheep. The dog has to show a sense of responsibility for them. That's the basic training. Beyond the herd, we also examine the dog's own stability and self-confidence. It's exposed to optical and acoustic signals to see if it freaks out and how long it takes to calm down again.
The deterrent effect works. When there are protection dogs with the sheep, wolves look for other prey, deer for example. But protection can never be 100%. In wolf territory, sheep farmers have to expect that they'll lose animals from time to time.
I lost 10 sheep because of the wolf. Yeah, he's back. It's a fact. And I think I just have to do what I can to protect the sheep.
That includes herding the sheep together at night, for which she is dependent on her 2 herding dogs. She trained her dog Saya herself.
Her I trust, yes, 100%, because she sees also danger. So she does not just bring the sheep or push the sheep. When she sees that there's a cliff, she waits and she takes it easy. So her I can really trust because she thinks for herself as well.
Lean has to round up nearly 900 sheep into the nighttime fold. It takes 1 to 2 hours every night. Human and animals are a well-coordinated team. For the herding dogs, it's the high point of the day. Border collies and other herding races are especially bred for this work. People have been setting them to work in the fields for centuries. Herding and tending is in their blood. In the past, when there weren't yet any wolves in Grisons, the sheep were allowed to wander free in the meadows at night. A lot of sheep farmers even left their sheep in the mountains without shepherds. The Combe d'Astels Alp, where Lean works, also managed without shepherds for some years. Unthinkable today. The losses will be too big. The herd protection dogs stay overnight with the sheep, guarding by shepherds, herd protection dogs, and by penning. Nothing more can be done to keep the sheep safe from wolves.
I also have animals that die from Steinschlag, that fall down, that are sick, and it's also nature. And those cases are much more than the ones who get killed from the wolf.
Wolves are not the biggest problem, but they have made alpine grazing more demanding. Farmers have been grazing their livestock in the Swiss Alps for many hundreds of years, and for most of that time there were wolves here as well. It's just that humans have forgotten how to deal with the predators. There's not all that much to eat in the grazing areas of the Alps. So in some regions, the sheep have to be moved on in midsummer, as with this herd, about 50 kilometers away from Lean. At the beginning of July, the first area is grazed out, and the shepherds drive around 500 sheep to another Alp near the Austrian border. They have a long trek ahead of them. It'll take them a good 8 hours. It takes a lot of effort, and a vet has to be present. The shepherds and all the sheep farmers also take part. They make a stopover at the Grüsche Alp farm for a health check, a chance for the farmers to take another close look at their animals. Jan Bohner is responsible for organizing the move. He keeps some sheep himself as a sideline. All the animals are put through a disinfection bath. This protects against foot rot, a dangerous and infectious inflammation of the hooves. A good opportunity to count the sheep.
All there, down to the last one. Thanks not just to the good weather, but also to the shepherds. We're really pleased.
Some new arrivals need registering and are treated for worms. Finally, they set off again. They'll be en route for another 5 hours at least. It's uphill towards the Sulzfluh peak. The new grazing area is nearly 2,400 meters up. It's a stressful move for both humans and animals, but then they'll have nearly 3 months of peace and quiet. Most of the sheep in Grison are kept for lambs, meat and wool. But that no longer brings in much of a return. So up on the Bodenalp in Langwies, they're looking for alternatives. David Sippert also keeps sheep, but for milk. His family has been farming the local alpine pastures for 400 years. He wants to keep up the old traditions and is therefore looking for new ways to market his products. David Sippert would like to be at least partly independent of government subsidies, so he's come up with new ideas. Every summer he takes his family up into the mountains.
Was mir am besten gefällt, ist sicher die Schönheit von der Natur, wo man so erlebt.
What I like best is the beauty of nature. Every day in the mountains with the animals and the plant life, that gives me a lot of strength. And of course, it's great to work together as a family, with my wife, and often the children join in. That's by no means standard. Impossible in many occupations.
Selbstverständlich in vielen anderen Berufen ist das so nicht möglich.
Every evening he milks his sheep. That's rare in Grison. Sheep's cheese is not traditional here. David Sippert wants to secure new sources of income in case the state cuts back its support at some point. Next, please. The sheep are milked for around 5 months, then they're serviced by the ram. Until then, they produce about a litre of milk a day. The milk is processed immediately. David travels down to the valley at least twice a week to his own dairy, where he produces organic sheep's cheese. Production takes about half a day, all handmade and therefore labor-intensive. The finished cheese is put in the maturing chamber and after 4 or 5 days can then be wrapped. The Sipperts supply village shops and restaurants in the region. The sheep's cheese business is doing well, but they couldn't support themselves from it alone.
For our business, the direct payments from the state are an important part of the turnover. Farming all the land is a lot of work, especially when you produce hay, partly on steep slopes. That would not be viable through product sales alone.
David is also pursuing unusual paths as far as grazing is concerned. He also has ponies, horses and donkeys up on the Alp, alternating with the sheep. That's also supported by the state. It's very good for the biodiversity and condition of the meadows, because the animals graze on different plants.
The dry grass here forms tussocks that the sheep don't like eating. But donkeys and horses are happy to eat it. And in addition, if you keep these animals in the meadows, it ensures that a balanced mixture of weeds, grasses and flowers is maintained.
Maintaining the alpine landscape can be achieved both through old traditions and new approaches. Nevertheless, the way the Alps are worked has changed very little in centuries. It's nature that sets the pace up here. Summer is coming to its close. It's already quite cold in the mountains. Soon the first snow will come. At the end of September, Leen is getting ready to drive the sheep down the mountain. She's spent a good 4 months with the animals up in the mountains. Now she has to take the 900 sheep entrusted to her safely down into the valley. The descent is the culmination of the year. The rock tunnel is a bottleneck along the way, but as soon as the first sheep are through, the rest of the herd follow. There's another 10 kilometers to go, and around 1,000 meters in altitude down to the village. The sheep have to be kept moving, not too fast and not too slow. The right pace is important for the herd to keep together. Christian Erni is responsible for everything running smoothly. A brief stop for the herd to come together again. When the paths get wider, individual sheep keep breaking away. And if things go wrong, hundreds of others can quickly follow. So it's vital that no group heads off in the wrong direction and, for example, disappears into the forest. Leen is responsible for ensuring that no sheep gets lost. Without her dogs, she wouldn't stand a chance. The herding dogs will cover the whole distance several times over today. Everyone's relieved that the weather's playing along this year. Often they're overtaken by rain or snow by this time. That's not only unpleasant, but makes the descent even more dangerous than it already is. Not much further now down to the valley. They've taken about 2.5 hours so far and descended a good 1,000 meters in altitude. Carl Ernie's sheep barn. This is where most of the sheep live. One of the herd protection dogs has clearly suffered from the hardships of the descent. He's already 10 years old and ready for retirement. Next year, he'll stay down below in the valley. Some of the animals still have a way to go. A sophisticated sluice system divides them into smaller groups so that each farmer can take his sheep home. Arno Casti, who's over 80, has also come along to take delivery of his sheep, maybe for the last time. He's probably going to give up keeping sheep soon. His granddaughter and daughter have come with him. They want to experience Arno's world one more time. Leen is happy that she's brought the sheep safely down to the valley. The season is coming to an end for her. One more signature, and the responsibility for the animals is back with their owners. They all have a special relationship to their animals. The older ones, who have known a completely different world, and the younger ones, who are making their own way in life. State subsidies are helping to maintain alpine farming, but the farmers want to give their work added value. With wool, for instance. In autumn and spring, professional shearers go from village to village. The right grip and the sheep hold still, so there are hardly any injuries. The shearers need 2 to 5 minutes per sheep, resulting in up to 4 kilograms of wool. It's hard to believe. 10 years ago, this wool was practically worthless, but the sheep had to be sheared in any case. Many farmers simply threw the wool away or burned it, a natural product for the waste bin, because there were just no buyers for it. What looks soft and fluffy is actually unpleasant to the skin. The fleece of alpine sheep is relatively short and scratchy, very different, say, from merino wool. The Swiss stand no chance against the competition from New Zealand. But thanks to a clever sales idea, the situation is improving. The farmers still don't make a lot of money from their wool, but there are now takers. They're not just marketing the product itself, but also advertising everything connected with it, the countryside, tradition and a lifestyle. And slowly the price of wool is rising. Instead of throwing the wool away or burning it, the farmers now take it to collection points. The biggest customer is the Swiss Wool Company. It collects almost half of Switzerland's wool. They accept everything the farmers bring them and pay cash in hand. The idea behind Swiss Wool is working out. A lot of customers, especially in Switzerland, are willing to pay a bit more for the guaranteed origin. The original Swiss wool is processed not in Switzerland, but in Germany, in Dinkelsbühl near Stuttgart. After washing it, it weighs half of what it did before. They produce around 200 tons of Swiss wool here every year.
It's typically for mattresses. We call it B quality. A is for clothing. It's being processed now. We'll load it on the truck tonight, and tomorrow it'll be in Switzerland at the mattress makers.
The Swiss wool label was established around 10 years ago. More and more products have been introduced for quilts, felt, loden cloth and jacket padding, even for fleece and insulating material. The label, grown in Switzerland, is a selling point. The alpine farmers benefit from Swiss wool, as does the environment. There are no long transport routes, and in lots of cases, woolen fleece is even replacing man-made fiber products. In Grisons, winter has set in. A few months ago, sheep, cows and goats were still grazing here. The Alps are hardly recognizable. Up to 3 meters of snow are not uncommon at this altitude. Sheep spend the cold winter months in the barn and live off the hay that the farmers made in summer in the valley. In winter too, the herd protection dogs are always with the sheep. That's no problem in a big barn like this, but for farmers with only a few sheep, it can be difficult to accommodate the dogs. For all the farmers, the running costs for food and vets are paid for once again by the state. Sheep farmer Karl Erni and herd protection consultant Jan Bohner are checking the animals. Their work never stops. Soon it will be the lambing season. Everyone's waiting for the snow to melt. The landscape that the Swiss are so proud of cannot be taken for granted. It will only be preserved if cows, sheep and goats continue to graze here. If there are people like Lien, willing to live with the animals on the Alp for months on end. If the Swiss continue to finance landscape conservation. Then Switzerland will remain a model for other mountain regions.